Okay, so good evening, everyone, and thank you for being here today on this webinar CP talk on mental health and productivity. I think it's really, really important, something close to my chest, and I'm glad that we've got Tivania from South Africa today talking about it. So Tivania, obviously, she's director and founder of Feminine Rising, author, speaker, and influencer. She's also written a book about her story on Girl on Fire. And as you can see on the left there, a nice quote from her. I never imagined I would be who I am today, but I'm here now. It's time for you to rise up. I will meet you at the top. So just before I kickstart, I just wanted to see if we can have Tivania quickly for a hello to all the audience. So Tivania, if you can just put your video quickly, that'd be great to see all of you here. Tivania, thank you very much indeed. Can we have a big round of applause to Tivania, please? A quick hands up for her time and wisdom today. And I'm sure many of you have connected on LinkedIn as well. Tivania has got many requests from Mauritius. So Tivania, just quickly, before I introduce you formally, what are we expecting today in few words?
I think we're going to be having a great conversation about hope. I think we're going to be left a lot more engaged, a lot more conscientized to mental health and associated social issues. And I'm hoping people get permission to tap into their own truth and own their own stories. That for me would be the biggest win. Thank you very much indeed. So I've got a few colleagues from saying hi from every part of the world. And we've also got Yazan from Toronto in Canada. So great to see you there as well. Thank you very much indeed. So Tivania, if I can ask you to switch off your video for a few minutes, and I'm just going to introduce you formally before we get to this. Again, everyone, if you can see my slide, that'd be great. If you can just give me a thumbs up as we proceed. So here we go. That's the webinar that Tivania, great book as well. I've read it. We're just going to go through a few quotes as well later on. So agenda today as well, as always, we've got housekeeping, quick introduction, survey. We've got part 1, Q&A, part 2, Q&A, part 3, and then Q&A, and finally we'll conclude. So we'll aim to conclude in about an hour and a half. The agenda today, as already mentioned by Tivania, is going to be on the correlation between mental health and productivity in the workplace, what employers need to do to create wellness in the workplace, men's mental health and masculinity ideals. And finally, we'll talk about the relationship between mental health and gender-based violence. Thank you, 232 registered today. Thank you very much indeed. Of course, please email me your name at the end of the CPD, plus your feedback, so then I can issue a certificate attendance for you. Hopefully, it's just going to be 1 hour plus. So, Gorgajan, thank you to Tivania for giving back, and thanks for million to be here today. So who I am, I think most of you know who I am, but just quickly, love construction, love learning, love sharing, love people, passionate about giving back, and currently 19 years plus. In 6 months time, I'm hoping to be 20 years in the construction industry. So honored, privileged, and humbled to have all of you today. So we're just going to do a quick menti.com as we do. It's going to be a first for Tivania as well. So if you can just go to Menti, everyone, menti.com. And if you just type in 4601281. So if you can go on your mobile, or you can switch off a different tab on your mobile or on your phone. And I'm just going to share the screen now with you, just to make sure we go on quickly on Menti, just to make sure we've got you there. So I think we've got a Menti now. And then if you can just put your name or your country where you're watching us from. I know most of you are from Mauritius, so the town or wherever you're watching us right now, that'd be great to see all of you. And then the next question, which is very important about as well, which I'll be asking you. So if you can just put anything, please, your alias name or first name, and then we'll take it from there. So yeah, so we've already got Kemraj watching us right now. I've got about 45 seconds. So if you can just please log into menti.com. 4601281, and already we can see lots of friends from Mauritius, which is fantastic to see. And yeah, so please, if you can just put your comment in. We've got KSA, which I believe is South Africa. Great to see Marco as well, Janita. Right, yeah, so about 30 seconds before we move on to the next question. Fantastic to see all of you.
I think 15 of you have already logged into menti.com. So great to see this live interaction. And yeah, so I'll just wait for a few seconds before we move to the next one. And we've got Ratna from USA. Good to see you as well. And yeah, so I've just got a few more seconds before we move to the next question. And we'll move on to the next question now. And okay, so thank you very much, everyone. We move to the next one. And the next one is really a good one, actually. What is your understanding of mental health? Which, again, something Tivania will touch on and kind of set the context and background of really of the talk today. So we've got Elgin from Oman. I think she had been the first slide, but never mind. We've got stress, peace, ability to weather change, stop normal productivity. So anything, everyone, if you'd like to put in anything you'd like to think, what is your understanding of mental health? Well-being being the first one right now. And as you can see the picture of Tivania at the back and the book that she wrote, which again we'll touch about. So as we can see stress being one of the key reasons, peace, well-being, ability to weather change, and psychological well-being, contentment, okay, yeah, serenity, yeah, so yeah, please keep putting them in, stability. So again, as you can see, that's going to be good for Tivania in terms of seeing, kind of putting context the talk for today. So thank you very much indeed, everyone, for putting your comments in. Hugely appreciated. But as you can see, well-being, peace, and stress are around the middle right now, and something we need to talk a lot about today. So thank you. And I'm just going to swap to the main screen. Okay, so thank you very much indeed. Again, if you can see the menti.com again, if you can just put your hands up on that one before I move to the next slide. So thank you. So as many thought leaders, we can see Tivania there with the like of Jay Shetty and everyone else there. And it's all about, you know, Tivania is probably one of the thought leaders. And they are speakers, podcasters, and social media influencers, casting a white shadow, helping to shape and improve millions of lives between them. They have different areas of specialty, diverse background, and varied interests, but in their own way, each carry the torch of the hope, positive movement, women empowerment, and mental health in their respective industry and values. You can also check out Tivania website, which is www.tivaniamoodley.co.za. Of course, we'll find all the details. And I just want to play a quick video about Tivania when she talked about done with silence when it comes to shame, judgment, and stigma around mental health. So what about you? So let me just share that quickly before we move on to the next slide. Okay, so I'm just going to share this video with you now, and hoping you can see this.
For many years, I was suppressed.
Just making sure, once again, let me do that share again and making sure you've got the video. There you go. Okay, so if you can hear the sound and the video again, please, if you can just put your hands up. Thank you very much indeed.
For many years, I was suppressed, and it was something that society dictated to me I ought to be. Depression was something that I never really understood. Depression was a stigma. It still is a stigma in many societies. And I could not understand where I fit in society. I could not understand what my relevance was, what my purpose was. And so I retreated into a corner. I retreated into a darkness of my own making. And for many years, I lived an existential life, what I call breathing a little and calling it a life. I thought that I had nothing to give to this world, nothing to offer. I didn't have a name for depression. I just thought it was something that I could possibly snap out of until I became so depressed that I tried to kill myself. So many of us don't have the words to articulate what it is that we're feeling. For women especially, for Indian women particularly, you know, we have been taught to be silent and to not air our dirty laundry, so to speak. We've been told to suck it up. We've been taught to live a certain way. And for me, it has become imperative that I get to share my message. It is vital for me to be able to authentically speak about the things that are taboo, to begin the conversations that really matter, to give other people permission to do the same. I think lots of us are longing for authenticity, lots of us are longing for purpose, and lots of us need to find direction. And my story is hopefully a testament to what we're capable of doing, and how the stories that people give to us, the narrative that goes in our own heads, it's not, the story can always change. And that basically is the reason that I'm so vocal about my journey. Growing up in the Indian community, I was prescribed to be silent and smiling. I am now done with silence, and I'm done with smiling. I think as women, and as young women particularly, we need to stop the shame, we need to stop the judgment, and we need to start living authentically. My name is Tivania Moodley, and I am done with silence on shame and judgment when it comes to mental health.
Okay, so thank you very much indeed again. I'm just going to go back to sharing the screen of the slide to introduce Tivania properly. So thank you very much on watching that video. Just making sure we go back on the slides. Fantastic, thank you. All right, so again, as you can see on my screen there, on 15th of June, Tivania shared a post on LinkedIn about failed suicide attempt 7 years ago, and the post was trending for 3 weeks with 300,000 views and 12,000 reaction. And what Tivania says is obviously tell me one thing only, that people connect with stories of truth and hope. And I've had a barrage of private messages from people desperate for help. And I have the honor of people saying my words stop their suicide ideation. For years, I've suffocated my voice because of shame. Now that voice is someone's lifeline. So we are already honored to have Tivania here today. So a few quotes from a book before I introduce Tivania formally. That's a book. I'll send you the link as well. I love the book. I've highlighted probably the entire book. So just a few quotes here. In June 2014, I thought my life was over and trying to the end, but the universe, in her infinite wisdom, knew that there were bigger things in store for me, bigger than my very small imagining could have mustered. It was not my time to die. My greatest teachers emanated from the mess, chaos, failure, trauma, and self-hatred. And then a few more quotes before we conclude. I embrace who I truly am and who I always been, a real life warrior that was never meant to fade into oblivion or become anyone else's version of me. This is why I decided to tell my story, because it's mine to own. It's a human occupational hazard to settle for less in life, which we normally do, of accepting the invitation to an exquisite holiness. Last but not least, when I allowed myself to stare fear in the face, I was able to connect the dots backward. From there, I could see bigger picture, recognizing the beauty in truth and tenacity, and why every single struggle had to happen to get me to this point. It made me realize how much of time I've spent hating on certain choices I've made. The outcome and experiences went wrong, even though I made the wrong. In hindsight, every single thing was a catalyst toward living my soul purpose. And finally, I am learning every day how to use my fire to light my life instead of burning everything down. So quickly, the presenter, before we get Tivania on board, director, founder of Feminine Rising, author, speaker, and influencer. Tivania is the author of an autobiography called Girl on Fire, a motivational speaker, social media influencer, and executive committee member and South African representative of the Global Mental Health Peer Network. She's the founder director of a business called Feminine Rising that deals with gender-based violence awareness, women empowerment, and mental health advocacy with a focus on men's mental health. Tivania survived rape, intimate partner violence, a suicide attempt, and over 20 years of depression, and now has spent her life creating awareness around these issues. And finally, her story is one of hope, inspiration, and transformation. So Tivania, can I ask you to obviously put on your video as I launch this survey as well, just making sure. And the survey goes on to say, how many of you are currently struggling with mental health issues? Yes, I'm suffering. No, be totally honest. Of course, so whatever you say, obviously we won't see your name, but please let us know if you're struggling as we get to Tivania as well. So I'm going to stop sharing now, and obviously we'll wait for the vote. Tivania, thank you very much indeed for being here as well. Hugely appreciate it, of course. And obviously looking at the poll right now, Tivania, what do you think the percentage would be?
I think we're living in such unprecedented times that I think every single one of us has some semblance of mental health issues, even if it's something as basic as exhaustion. I think all of us have got COVID exhaustion. And so it would be very interesting to see if people are authentic about their responses. I'm leaning towards the higher end of the spectrum for that.
Okay, so I've got about almost 80% of the audience have voted. Right, it's quite a tricky one, this one. So I'm going to share the result with you. And we've got 38% say, yes, I'm suffering. But a whopping 62% say, no, I'm not suffering. So maybe we can enlighten them a bit more about mental health and issues that we can obviously detect at an early stage.
I think it's amazing if people are not struggling with mental health, but if we can just define that to start off with, it is basically holistic well-being. So your cognitive, behavioral, and emotional well-being. So in other words, your mind, body, and spirit, all of it working in sync. So if you are not struggling with mental health, then it means that everything is functioning harmoniously 100%. For me personally, I can say that I'm about 75% well, but there's obviously disconnect with the stresses that we have to live with every day, with the personal traumas, with baggage that may be repressed and unhealed. I personally am a single mom, so there's a whole lot of stress with that. So all of those things contribute. And I think that it is very rare for people to be 100% on the spectrum, but it's knowing how to navigate through those difficult times that matter.
Yeah, thank you, Tivania. So just quickly, Tivania, maybe we can start with your story. You've seen some of the quotes. I hope they were quite the right motivating quote, of course. And we've seen a video which you look very serious on that video. You never laughed. You took it really seriously. But obviously, we'd love to hear your story a little bit about where you started and where you are today as a role model and inspiration figure, which will be part one, but we'll obviously get questions and picked up questions. So if you can just share some of your stories and your ups and downs.
Firstly, thank you very much for that amazing introduction. I was really in awe of the effort and also in awe of my life story. It's always a beautiful thing to be able to witness my own transformation. And I really honored that. So I am a storyteller, and my story started in effect on the 3rd of June 2014, when I had a failed suicide attempt. That was a pivotal moment for me because it was a culmination of 25 years of real trauma. I had been through the experience of rape. I had been through the experience of intimate partner violence twice. I had 3 miscarriages in my marriage. I had 2 divorces. I had betrayal of the real worst kind. And all of those things compounded the depression that I didn't have a name for. And then on that night of the 3rd of June 2014, I was done with life and life was done with me. I had written letters to my children. I had put all of my affairs in order. And for 2 months, I meticulously planned my suicide every single day. By what I can attribute to divine providence, I obviously survived. The very next day, I was put in touch with an organization that does personal development. And serendipitously, I was put into that workshop, and within 3 days, my life changed forever. Wow. I was given the greatest gift of my manager at the time. We incidentally laughed about it today because I talk about the fact that I never liked her, but she's someone that I absolutely adore now because she gave me the greatest gift of being able to see right through my bullshit. So I had gone to work every day pretending that I was absolutely fine, putting up the front that I was okay, assuring myself that my appearances were working. And whatever it is that she had seen in me, she called me out on that. And that was the greatest gift anyone could ever give me, because that was a catalyst that began the real transformation. So I had gone through those 3 days of that workshop. And on the 8th of June, I started a new story. I was able to change the narrative that I had grown up with, that I was less than, We all grow up with the narrative or with the story that we tell ourselves. It's called a fundamental life operating principle, or a FLOP. And the FLOP is basically everything you learn from indoctrination, from socialization, from your cultural beliefs, everything you see as a child. And that story for me for over 25 years was, I am not good enough. And every single choice that I made emanated from, I am not good enough. So on the 8th of June, 2014, began a new story. I was able to own my truth, which is something that liberated me. I was able to tell the truth of who I am, share my life story very candidly, and that was the thing that set me free. So in the last 7 years, I have surpassed even my wildest dreams of what I thought would be possible for me. My dream for over 20 years was to be a published author, something that I achieved 3 years ago.
Yeah.
I'm now on the board of directors for a psychiatric hospital in Johannesburg, South Africa. I'm an executive committee member of a global mental health organization. I'm sitting on 3 advisory boards for gender-based violence awareness in South Africa. And the work that I'm doing is absolutely purposeful. And I think the one thing that we need to take away from the conversation is that all of the succession of life events, all of my so-called failures, all of the pain and trauma was the very thing that allowed me to become this woman.
Wow.
So people find themselves right now, and however you're struggling and whatever the pain is that you're going through, it is the greatest gift, because from that something beautiful can emerge. And I'm a living testament to that story.
And Tivania, when you say about 25 years of depression, I mean, anybody watching right now must have gone through some sort of depression. Maybe it could be 6 months, 3 months, or 6 years, but I've never heard of 25 years. You have to live with that. I mean, any advice would you give to anybody watching right now?
So I think there's a lot more consciousness around depression now. I think that despite the fact that we've got such a long way to go in terms of destigmatization, there's a lot more language and consciousness around these hard conversations. My depression started when I was 14 or 15 years old. I didn't have the language for it. I didn't have the term for it. I didn't have the name for it. And at that stage, silent and smiling was the proviso. And I had to accept that that was the mold of how I had to be. So whatever I was struggling with was not something that I could verbalize. And coming from a very small town with small town mentality, it was something that was absolutely unheard of, that you discuss all of these things. Now, when you start looking at all of those things and the series of really traumatic events, it becomes compounded. And when it's not dealt with, it becomes repressed, and then it is inevitably going to get an explosion. So if you look at the series of life events, every single thing happened so quickly, from the rape at the age of 19, being a mother at the age of 21, to being a single mother at the age of 21, to losing my father at the age of 21 to cancer, to being married again at 26, and then having 3 miscarriages a couple of years later, and then being divorced at 31 for the second time. There was no breaks in between all of the trauma. And so every single thing just compounded the stuff that was repressed already.
Wow. And Tivania, I think you talk about, I mean, a lot of people go through a lot of issues, as you mentioned about, you talk about rape, which is obviously, I mean, it's a strong word for us in Mauritius and in the Asian community as well. But you decided to go out and say, look, I want to talk about it because someone else can get, someone else can be relating to your story.
So it begins with having the hard conversations, right? And it begins with saying all of the hard words that remain frozen on our tongue. And it is through articulating all of that and, taking our head out of the sand, so to speak, that we are able to heal, because we've got too many broken people going around, and it has a ripple effect on every single thing that we do. Rape culture is pervasive in every single industry, in every single culture, in every single country. You can't run away from it. We're living in the rape capital of the world in South Africa. Incidentally, today begins the 16 days of activism. You'll notice my white ribbon. in support of that. Against.
So what's the white ribbon, Tivania? Why do you wear that?
So today is the start of 16 days of activism for no violence against women and children. So it is a campaign that you do for 16 days to create consciousness and awareness around eradicating gender-based violence and femicide. It's something that I'm deeply passionate about, being a rape survivor, and also the fact that there's a correlation between mental health, which we'll talk about later. But it's just in solidarity and in a way that promotes peace. So I'm very, from a spiritual perspective, I don't believe in anti-this or anti-that campaigns, but in solidarity for peace, yeah, I'm definitely game for that.
Okay, so obviously we're getting some question in. Everyone, if you're watching, obviously, please put your question in. We've got a question from Yazan from Toronto. It was more of a statement. Definition of mental health by Tivania makes all of us have experienced mental health sometime in our life. So what he's saying is that maybe we haven't gone, I mean, 64% say they haven't gone through it, but we are probably going through it. It's just that we don't know, right, Tivania?
Absolutely that. And also the stigma of shame and judgment, the fear of the shame and judgment. A lot of people are still very reluctant to raise their hand and say, yes, I'm struggling with my mental health, because we associate it with a bum that's walking on the street, mumbling to himself, half naked. But that is actually not, the representation of mental health. We struggle with mental health. It's not a bad word. It's not a taboo word. It's something that we need to discuss because it has a ripple effect on every facet of our lives.
Yeah. So Tivania, just quickly, I'm going to launch a quick survey to everyone to really set the scene. And the first question is really, do you still believe there's a stigma around mental health disclosure in the workplace? Now, I know all of you works and few students today, but it'd be great to see what you guys are saying about, do you believe there's a stigma around mental health disclosure? For us, Tivania, in the construction industry, to me, it's a big yes, because we are treating, and I treat physical health and safety similar to mental health safety as well, because we do have a lot of expatriate coming over here, expat working in Mauritius. They are far away from the family. They're working in a very dangerous environment. So I think it's just creating those awareness. And I'm just going to end the poll now and share the result with you. So the result here, Tivania, is 96% say they believe in stigma around mental health disclosure. What's your take on that?
Wow. It's an absolute accurate representation of stigma. I think the biggest fear that people have is whether their mental health disclosure would then be perceived as not being able to function in the work environment. And I think also the biggest fear, and I know this with me particularly in my own experience, it was something that scared me because I thought it would be absolutely related to my performance. Interestingly, I was not able to perform when I was struggling with mental health issues because it's a ubiquitous thing. It has an effect on every part of our lives, as I keep saying. So it's something that I couldn't hide away from because it creeps in, it's pervasive. And so, yeah, absolutely, you can't run away from that truth.
But we talk about workplace and the mental health disclosure, but what are the causes? If someone watching us right now think like, have I got mental health issues? What did you experience? Was it like you didn't want to go to work? You just wanted to put the curtain back on and sleep? What was like some of the few early symptoms, if you like?
So I think it's a really subjective thing, and it is very different for women compared to men. Men can still be really functional in the sense that they can still wake up, but it manifests differently. For men, it can predominantly manifest physically. So with backache, headache, apathy, loss of appetite, increase of appetite. For women, it can be crying. It is definitely being distracted, staying away from work, not wanting to go to work. And yeah, it's just a whole spectrum of things that are really subjective. For me, particularly, it was not paying attention, not being able to execute duties, turning up late for work, staying away, not wanting to get up in the morning to go to work, making tons of excuses. staying on my phone when I was going through the process of intimate partner violence. I used to be on my phone out of fear the whole time. So not being able to eat, not being able to sleep, it's just correlated from, you know, from a mental, from a emotional perspective, as well as from a spiritual and physical perspective.
Wow. I'm just going to pick up one question from Rupesh. Rupesh goes on to say, what got you out of bed every morning for all of the years, which we talked about, and what made you keep going at it? For example, writing your book while all your brain wanted to do was switch off. So I can relate to Rupesh there, because working in the construction industry or any industry right now, you know, you start work at 8 o'clock, you finish at 7, you're completely dead, you're still trying to do your struggle, yet have the motivation to start writing a book. So I'm sure many here probably want to write a book somehow in the future. What's your advice to them?
I wrote my book after my failed suicide attempt. My book was published 3 years ago. So I had to have another 4 years of healing, another 4 years of doing the work internally before I got the strength to be able to write my book. I was not functional for the time before my failed suicide attempt. I don't think that you can have any creativity. There's no innovation that comes to you. There's no energy, there's no excitement, there's no joy if you're in a state of depression. As I say, if you're apathetic, if you're exhausted, you're not going to have any innovative ideas. You're not going to have the excitement to be able to hone a certain craft. So to be able to do all of that, you need to heal the stuff that needs healing. And the only way you can do that is bring to the light everything that's kept in the darkness. And we have a society, and I know that's across every single country, where we are great at anesthetizing our pain. We run away from it. So we anesthetize with alcohol and with drugs and with sex and with food and now with incessant scrolling. And we don't want to deal with the stuff that we need to deal with. So what my failed suicide attempt taught me was that the only way out of pain is through it.
Wow.
So what I had to do is that I had to go through the agonizing journey of bringing to the light everything that I had kept in the dark. And it was a real roller coaster of emotions. My guts were literally on the floor for 3 whole days while that process of transformation is happening. And it is an every single day event. It is something that never ends. So 7 years post the suicide attempt, I am still learning. I am still doing the work. I am still discovering all of the stuff that I need, that needs healing. There's one layer that gets unveiled and then I get triggered again. And then there's another layer that gets unveiled. So it's a continuous unbecoming, so to speak.
Wow.
Becoming of everything the world told me I had to be, of all of the conditioning of everyone else's voices, and being able to live and express my truth. So to answer that question, or in response to that, you cannot do anything. You cannot know what your purpose is. You cannot, you can't heal from something that you haven't faced yet. And that is the thing.
And Tivania, just quickly, I think it kind of picks up from Yassan's question as well. Did writing the book provide relief during write-up? So, but before, I will go before that. So I think I've read numerous books or even blogs. People say it's good therapy to write things at the end of the day. Were you doing this? And if so, what's your advice to all of us just to get it out of the system?
So there are different ways that we can express or release energy. My way was writing because I'm an inherent storyteller. So that was a cathartic process for me. I wrote my book with the intention of honoring my journey. That was my intention. My intention was never to sell copies. My intention was never to make money. It was never even about anyone else. It was literally to honor my journey. And that was something that was deeply, it was the last layer in 4 years of deep introspective healing. For everyone else, it can be music, it can be gymming, it can be taking a walk, it can be in nature. There are different ways that you release that energy. People talk, or other self-help people talk about writing it down, because in that way it becomes more real to you.
Yes.
So when you're writing something down, you then hold yourself accountable, because we are very good at hiding again. So when you bring it out to the fore, you're forced to look at it. And that's effectively what writing does for me as well.
I think you've just touched on it. We are very good at hiding our emotions. And when we're going to write it, we will get those emotions out. As simple as that. So thank you very much for this. There's a question Akash asked, and this goes on to the next second survey, and I'll pick that after the survey. So let me just see if we just do the survey now, and we'll pick up Akash Mishra. So are you afraid that medication, be it for anything, it can be stress pill or anything else, will pose limitation at work? Am I right in saying that, Tivania, in terms of stress pill or any medication to lessen mental health issues, right? That's the question, really.
Absolutely. So it's basically knowing that if you have to go out there asking for help, there's a possibility that you're going to be put on treatment. And a lot of people are absolutely afraid of that because it means taking time off work to go into a clinic or hospital or doctor. You don't know the effects or the side effects that the medication may have. For me personally, when I was on antidepressants for the longest time, I felt like the walking dead. Be absolutely sick. I would be devoid of emotion. And that used to be such a fear because I was in a client-facing environment and I needed to be upbeat. So very often I would skip medication. So that was the purpose of that question.
Okay. So I'm just waiting. I think when I did the survey, it didn't kind of launch properly, but we've got colleague voting now. We've got 43%. And it's kind of similar with medication of not sleeping at night and things like that, having insomnia, I think. All of these adds up. So we've got about 52%. So I'm just going to share that with you, which is quite interesting poll on this one, really. And I'm going to share that with you. Do you feel supported by your employer enough to have an emotional conversation? So I've just switched off. This is the next one, not the medication one. I do apologize, but we're looking at 35% regarding just the support there, but 65% they're saying they're not supported. So that's the first one. Let me just go back to the second question on the medication. I just want to make sure.
I think they're actually related. Yeah, I think the answers would be correlated because the fear would be directly correlated to how supported you feel. Obviously not wanting to take medication or being afraid to take time off from work means that you're not supported in any event.
Okay, so I don't know if the audience can see this question now. Are you afraid? Yeah, they can see it now. Are you afraid that medication compliance with pose limitation? I wanted to do that one because of COVID-19 right now. There's like boosters, second jabs, and all sort happening. And I'm assuming that this could be in the same category of, you know, we are afraid of taking things which can have nefarious effects. So, and already I can see the poll going up there. And I'm just going to give you a few seconds before we conclude. And the question goes on to Tivania while waiting for the poll is, Akash is asking, what works best in treatment of mental health? Is it medicine, counseling, or family support? So before you answer this, let me share the result with you. So you see the result there. 75% say they are afraid of taking medication. And 26% say, okay, we're not afraid, but already 3/4 of the audience doesn't want to take medication, which kind of backs up your comment.
I think it's not being afraid of taking medication, it's the compliance at work that people are afraid of, because obviously it's tied into your performance, the effect that it would have. It's so much easier to talk about another kind of disease, another physical disease, like having medication for cancer or being on treatment for cancer, being on treatment for diabetes. All of those things are socially acceptable physical illnesses, and we don't regard mental health as something that is a proper illness, and that's the destigmatization that I'm talking about. So obviously that fear is then connected to an employer support. So that absolutely makes sense. That poll makes sense completely. Okay,
thank you. We've got another question as well before we move on to part 2. We talked about do our emotion contribute to our mental health? And if it's yes, how to proceed forward effectively to deal with all these dead ends, thoughts and emotions? So emotion relating to mental health. Any thoughts on that one?
It absolutely is related to mental health, because that's the compass. Our heart is the compass of everything that we do. It's basically our GPS. That's the way I regard it. What happens is that we have a disconnect between our brain and our heart. And our brain will be telling us, you know, all of the stuff that doesn't serve us, like you're not good enough, you need to be a certain way, putting pressure on us. And then your heart is telling you, I'm not okay, I'm not okay. And your brain and heart have that constant war that you wage against each other. And that definitely has an effect on your mental health. So your emotional is actually the most important thing, because what happens with your brain and with your thought process is that you become indoctrinated, and it's not always accurate. It's your ego that speaks to you from your brain capacity. But when you talk about your heart functionality, that's actually the truth of what you're feeling. So if you're not okay, if you know that you're not happy, that is basically a signal that something is not right in your life. And that is what you pay attention to.
Okay, thank you. In your book, you talk a lot about pain. And there was a quote about, what about me and my pain? And there's a lot of, you've gone through a lot of pain, which is quite incredible in the book. And that ties in nicely with the anonymous attendee question, where he or she says, the pain recovery is indeed really hard to live through, but it is never as hard as living through the pain years after years without rest. So obviously it's gradually, it's exponential. But you've talked a lot about pain. Any advice to all of us, if we are suffering, what are the advice to keep going and keep being consistent at it?
So as I said before, the only way out of pain is through it. And we've become masters at suppressing our pain and running away from it. And it inevitably catches up with us. And it will inevitably manifest as our lives falling apart, as disease, as ill health, as your marriage failing, as literally meeting with accidents. Those are all indicators that something's not okay. And you can't run away from yourself forever, because wherever you go, there you are. And it was something that I thought I had mastered. I thought I had mastered running or keeping one step ahead from my pain, and it catches up with you like a tsunami. And then you are literally swallowed whole. And it is incredibly difficult to try and break yourself out of that, or try and crawl out of that abyss. And what happens is that we are in the struggle of our own making, the suffering of our own making, and it's something that's within our control to deal with. And what that effectively means is that we have to face the things that we're running away from.
Yeah.
And it's when you face it, and when you start owning your truth and speaking your truth and being vulnerable enough to put yourself out there, can the healing actually begin. There's absolutely no other way to run away from that. None.
Absolutely. And I just want to take a quote from your book as well, Tivania. It really touched me. And you say about pain, and if everyone, maybe you have a pen or pad handy, and Tivania might have a breather. And it goes on to say, sometimes life has to hurt to get our attention. Death is a natural part of life, and no one's spared from it. We can let pain come and ask the bastard to at least teach us something while he outstayed his welcome. Pain is like the clouds. It will come and go, but love is the sun. It never goes away. It only gets hidden sometimes. So I found that statement really, really powerful, Tivania.
So I think I wrote that chapter or that paragraph after the death of my father, where I was trying to find a way to make his death wrong and try to run away from that. And it became so enormous for me that I didn't know what to do with myself. And I had to sit with all of that pain. And I found myself being a single mom at that time, and being newly divorced, and being 21, and then losing my father. It was just the most horrendous thing. And then I realized that there's beauty in grief. And this is a really difficult thing when you're immersed in that pain. But, that grief is also an indicator of how much you've loved someone. Wow. And it gives an invitation for you to actually have a look at your life and think about what's truly important and figure out what's truly important. And that was the greatest gift that my father's death gave to us, is being able to examine what's truly important, who's truly important, and what we're here to do.
And what you also goes on to say, just to finish on pain, loving someone you love is a pain that cannot be quantified. I mean, you've just hit it on nail. I mean, you know, and I will just touch. We've got about 45 minutes left, and I know we can keep talking. We've got a question from Dell. Well, it's more of a statement, Dell. When I was healthy and performing, I kept a journal diary. When I was mentally ill, I was not. Can you relate to this?
I didn't get the first part. So
so Dale says, when I was healthy and performing, I kept a diary. So he was writing it. But when he was mentally ill, he wasn't keeping the diary. Can you relate to that?
So I don't know what kind of mental illness that was, whether it was something that was cognitive, chemical, whether it was circumstantial depression. But very often when we are in the throes of despair, as I said, we don't have the energy to be able to face our own demons. We want to run away from it. We want to make it wrong. And so we stop doing those things because we don't have the energy for doing what we used to do when we were in a healthy state. But I find that when we are doing it in the worst part, that is when the healing happens. So it's very difficult for you to see any hope or faith or to take any kind of constructive action when you're embroiled in misery. It's incredibly difficult, but that's precisely when you need to do it.
So Dale's saying the mental health issues was to do with the mental illness was to do with schizophrenia. Quite a technical, yeah.
Schizophrenia. Okay, yeah. That makes sense. So obviously there's a disassociation there, and you have to make peace. It's a very difficult disease to navigate, and I'm not a medical expert. I'm somebody just with lived experience, so I can't really speak from a place of authority. But having had this conversation with peers that have struggled with schizophrenia, it is a complete disassociation from your mind and body and spirit. And what tends to happen is that you can't continue the functionality that you used to before, but it's about paving a new way, finding a different way that makes sense to you with your new reality. And maybe, you know, we all go through these ebbs and flows in life, making peace with it, being, you know, acceptance is a huge thing. And, you know, from there, you can make different decisions that work for you, different choices.
So there's a question from Jolina there. When exactly did you know that you suffered from mental health? Was there a particular epiphany moment, like an aha moment, when you realized that I was depressed?
I think I had known from around the time when I was going through my second divorce.
And how old were you roughly, Tivania, if you don't mind me asking?
I think I was around 29 or 30. So yeah. I'd always known that something was wrong with me. I always knew that I was not okay. So I would erratically go and, you know, have therapy when I was an adult. I would sporadically see a psychiatrist. I would, not a psychiatrist, a psychologist. I would erratically go for counseling. I would erratically go on medication. Nothing shifted me. So I had the vocabulary because I was doing the work. There was a lot more awareness created in my 30s as opposed to when I was growing up. And a lot of people at that stage were coming out with depression. It was like sort of a buzzword at that stage. And so I didn't really have the language for it until I was in my early 30s. But when I realized that the depression was severe, because it almost became a white noise that I had lived with in the background of my life. It was something that was always there. I was never a happy person. I made peace with the fact that I was a miserable person. I made peace with the fact that I was a failure and I was relegated to failure category. And that was all the ambition that I had for my life. I knew that I was never going to amount to anything. I was never going to be anything. I was just going to be a woman that, you know, was breathing a little and calling it to life. That was effectively me. When I had that betrayal incident on my birthday was the day that the person I was dating at the time decided to tell me that he was cheating with my best friend of 13 years. They decided to be used to me on my birthday in 2014. That's when I realized that the depression was really severe because it was a catalyst that started my suicide ideation.
Wow.
So knew I'm in serious trouble. But at that stage, I was so caught up in that despair and misery that hope and faith just evaded me. And I didn't want to live anymore. And so it wasn't about what can I do to get help. It was, how do I get rid of this pain? And the only way I could is through death.
Wow.
And that's a huge trigger for people that are struggling. I get that. But it's also a testament to the tenacity of the human spirit, because obviously I'm here.
Yeah. And just at the back of this strong and powerful statement you made, anybody thinking or considering suicide right now, or maybe they've done it in the past or in the future, what's your advice to them? If they are thinking of suicidal or being, you know, trying to commit suicide, what would be your advice to them?
So when I tell my story and when I talk about the woman that I was 7 years ago, I can still connect with that pain. I still know what it's like to be in that darkness. And it's something that I still honor. I don't run away from it because it makes me human. So I know that when people are in that despair, when they are in that darkness, it is extremely difficult to understand that hope is available. You don't see it. Everything around you is going wrong, when there's no one there to pull you out. And I was in a situation where support was not readily available for me. I was very much alone, and I still had to take care of 2 children. So it was really extremely difficult for me. But you know, so I can understand what it's like to be in that situation as someone that has physically been there, where to even have a bath was difficult. To get out of bed took every ounce of energy that I had in me to get out of bed. I was literally the walking dead. So I absolutely know. But if my life story has to do anything for anybody today, it's to be an affirmation that what may feel like the end for you can literally be the beginning. And I've had huge things happen. I mean, 3 miscarriages is a huge thing for anybody to endure physically and emotionally. A rape, and I fell pregnant after the rape, and I had to have an abortion, and I had to do it in silence. And I started hemorrhaging as a result of the procedure. And so I had to be rushed into hospital, and there was a chance that I would never have a baby. So that was extremely traumatic. And my father died in front of us. That is extremely traumatic. Divorces in the Indian community is scandalous on another level. I had lost everything financially. I had lost my home, my car, down to a spoon. There was a stage where my domestic helper at one stage had to bring a loaf of bread to me to be able to feed my children. That is the level of despair that I was in, and the enormity of everything that I had gone through. But I was able to transcend that. I was able to transcend it in such a magnificent way that I now have become a purveyor of hope, that my story is a testament to what we're capable of, that we have inherent strength in us that we don't even know exists until we're into it. And all we need is someone to give us permission to say, I see you, and extend compassion, love, and kindness, which is what I got, and it was enough to liberate and free me.
Wow.
So my message is, wherever you find yourself, and if you're really struggling with suicide ideation, I hope that my story is there to lend credence to the fact that there is always hope. No matter what, there's always hope.
Wow. Wow. Can we have a big round of applause, everyone? If you can have your little emoji on this strong, extraordinary, powerful statement, which Tivania just made live. We're really touched by all these strong words right now. And of course, please put your comment in. What I'm going to do, I'm going to run a quick survey just to make sure we are in line. Again, we've got about 35 minutes. It's going really, really quick today. And we have no slides whatsoever. So it's truly incredible. Let me just launch this survey quickly before we, so this is the one. I don't know if you can see that on your side. Tivania is coming up. Yeah, I think it's coming up. Is there more that your employer can do to support you and your mental health? I'm sure it's a big yes, because Obviously, we're all working for fees at the end of the day, and ultimately the employer get all these fees, but it's about trying to give back to the employee in terms of their, mental, ill health, if you like. And I'm just gonna, most of already voted, so I'm gonna share the result with you. And we've got 91% says a big yes. So already we can see the impact there. And what sort of advice would you give to employer watching us today, Tivania?
So in the last few years, I have been an editor working in a very cutthroat advertising industry where there is no connection really. And it's an environment that is extremely fast-paced, and there's no time and capacity for mental health issues. Everything is go, go, go. People literally share performance-enhancing drugs under the table in broad daylight to be able to achieve and hone in on their creativity, and it's extremely unhealthy. So when I was in a state of despair a few years ago, probably 4 years ago, when I was in a very volatile relationship and experiencing intimate partner violence, I had went to my employer at the time, and he was busy texting on his phone. He didn't even give me the courtesy of engaging with me. And what I think I have learned in the last few years is that this mentality of not bringing your problems into the workplace needs to stop, because we are humans at the end of the day, right? We can't compartmentalize our feelings. There is an absolute correlation between productivity and mental health. You can't show up fully as who you are. You can't be productive. You can't be innovative. You can't be creative if there's other social stuff that's happening on the sidelines. Now, any great leader would know that, the way that you are able to connect with your staff is not only by supporting employee assistance programs, but it's also creating the space to have hard conversations. And that means that leaders need to lead with empathy, with compassion, and with vulnerability. And in many sectors, this is something that is completely frowned upon because it is very often male dominated, it is very driven and hard and purposeful, and people don't correlate those largely feminine issues, feminine feelings with masculinity. And that, takes us into a whole other conversation about masculinity. But if you want to actually be an engaging leader, you need to be able to create a safe space for your employees to be able to have the hard conversations and then to provide support.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. And just before we move on, obviously you've given us two strong, powerful statements there, but I just wanted to touch on your dad must have brought you in a very, resilient manner. And you say in your book where you said about, obviously when your lovely dad was passing away in 2013, he squeezed my hand as he took his last breath. Did he say anything to you as a tribute to your dad today?
He didn't. It was actually so traumatic because he died from lung cancer at the age of 46.
Yeah.
And so.
And that's very young.
Yeah, it's exceptionally young. It is exceptionally young. And he was in the prime of his life. And when he got really ill, he had disintegrated from the father, the strong man that I had known all my life. And he was really at that stage on morphine and completely disassociated. So he was incoherent. There was nothing that he could do. But the significance of holding my hand was a final goodbye. We actually had a very difficult relationship, or a very formal relationship, because my father was raised with the mentality from that generation of Indian men where, you don't, he was very firm and he was very hard and he didn't express his feelings.
Yes.
Wasn't somebody that was physically demonstrative, maybe when I was a baby, but certainly not when I was growing up. So it was a very difficult relationship, and we were just starting to forge a relationship when he was diagnosed. So yeah, it was incredibly difficult, and I had to break a lot of cycles of dysfunction that I had learned. And it was very, very hard to say goodbye to somebody that I was just starting to have a different relationship with.
Wow. I'm sure many, all the girls and women watching you, I mean, normally they are closer to their dad. I've got a daughter, so she's very close to me. I can relate exactly to what you're saying. Just quickly picked up some questions as we go for part 2. We've got a question from Sarpanan. Why is mental health not considered as a disease? Is that something you can comment on?
I think it's because there's so much of stigma and shame around it. And it's something that we need to change the narrative of. People are still very reluctant and scared because they feel like they will be considered less than if they have to come forth with any kind of mental health issue or that kind of truth or honesty, because immediately we feel like, something's wrong with you, you're less than, you're not going to be efficient in the workplace. And all of these narratives that have no place in modern society now. So people are still very scared. There's still a lot of fear around judgment and shame.
We've got a question from Anjali. I've been through hard emotional pain for years, under treatment for quite a time, tried to commit suicide as I couldn't find strength to overcome my pain. I was considered by my family, either I was acting or that I was being negative. Still now, issues have not really sorted out, but I think it's my therapy group really rekindle the love of being myself and to accept my weakness, not as a failure, but as a natural flow of life. Also, what he's saying is like, it's happening for her, as we say. What do you think, Tivania? Any advice to Anjali there that obviously her family is not taking her seriously, but what sort of advice would you give her?
I can relate to that because I think that I didn't feel supported for many years. People operate from their own level of awareness. So it's not necessarily that the family are deliberately being unsupportive, it's that they don't know any better. What also happens is that when you're in the situation, like I was particularly, you force other people to be examining themselves and facing their own demons. And a lot of people are not really all willing to do that. I was the black sheep in the family. I did not conform. And as a result of that, I felt very isolated and very alone. It took strangers, 2 strangers and an organization that gave me permission to liberate myself. What I can say to her is that it's not a weakness. To be a deeply feeling person in a hard world is an incredibly beautiful thing. And sometimes we are the light that needs to be manifested within the darkness. And, I'm using that analogy quite liberally because I think sometimes the darkness is the ignorance of our own making. And within the family, maybe she's the one that needs to be the light and bring the light. And it's through her awareness, breaking down of cyclic dysfunction, that you are able to pave a new way for your family. I certainly did that as a result of my own healing, being different, showing up as I truly am, living and speaking my truth. I have broken down the cycle of dysfunction in my family and started the hard conversations that nobody was willing to have before. It had to take me to do that. And it created a whole different connection and a whole different kind of relationship that I have with my family now, that's born from a place of absolute deep love and respect and authenticity, something we never had before. So she could be the greatest gift in that family to be able to bring the light. Wow. The only way to find out that you're the light is through the darkness.
And as you say, it's okay not to be okay, right? It's okay not to be okay. But Absolutely. Anjali goes on to say as well that the therapy group really rekindled the love of being herself. And would you advise to join groups like that, just to, if the family or maybe not, it's not that they're not accepting it, as you said, they're not aware of what's happening to her or him. So it's about increasing that awareness, which we are currently doing right now, but also joining different groups to really get you going, right? And get that fire back on.
Absolutely. So you don't always find it within your family. I found the love and acceptance from outsiders, I felt my sense of belonging and who I truly am. I found my tribe with the organization that saved my life. I never had that with my family. And that's absolutely okay. And another thing is that's incredibly important is that sometimes we don't have the opportunity to have people hold our hands. We are each responsible for our own mental health, and we are deserving enough and worthy enough to be able to do the hard work to heal, not just for our sake, but whomever that's around us that this could ultimately have an effect on. Absolutely. So what effect you will have on, in your community, on the people that you meet by living authentically, you may give someone else permission to be able to do that. It may not necessarily be in your family, and that's absolutely okay. It doesn't make it wrong. As I say, we operate from our own level of understanding, and very often families are just absolutely terrified to face the demons because it means having a look in the mirror, and that's exceptionally hard. As I said a million times before, we are exceptionally good at anesthetizing our pain and not looking at it.
Wow. Thank you very much indeed. The next question ties down nicely with Gyansha question. I'll just launch the polling quickly on this one. Hopefully you'll see that coming up now. And if it's, let me just check if it's working. Yes, working. So do you think places of employment should have recurrent workshop around mental health issues? Certainly, to me, it's a big yes. And it ties in with Gyansha question, where she's asking about, I do acknowledge that the fact that mental health is extremely crucial. How do I speak about it to be introduced at her school where she's currently working? So she's a educator, a lecturer. How do we bring mental health to the board and say, look, we need to do that with the students? What's your advice, Tivania? I'm sure you've advised many institutions and schools.
Yeah, so for me, it actually starts with owning your own story, being able to share your own story. That was the thing that connected me to different organizations, to different institutions, to different...
And Tivania, sorry I cut you there. 96% say yes. So yeah, as you can see, gradually throughout the talk, the percentage is going up because we can identify to what you're saying. So I do apologize for cutting you off, but 96% says we have to have workshop, which we will hear your advice to Gyansha now. Thank you.
I think that what it affirms is that we are also desperate for truth in its substantive form. What the sharing of my story reveals every single time I have a talk, every single time I have a conversation, is that people are desperate for permission. It can only start, and the connection can only happen when we start sharing our stories. As a precursor to sharing our story, we have to own our story, right? So you have to go through the process of being able to say, okay, this is what I'm dealing with. This is my story. Does it make me less than? Absolutely not. And being brave enough to share that in a vulnerable way that allows you to connect with someone else. So for me, when you have to speak from a position of academic authority, that doesn't always land with somebody like me, right? So if someone has to come in with an academic understanding of mental health or an academic understanding of gender-based violence, for me, the connection is missing. But if someone comes in with experience, as I am, and says, okay, this is my story, this is what's happened to me, and this is how I've transcended it, that for me is something that is real. It hits us at a visceral level. It lands at a cellular level, and it's the way that we connect with each other. So it begins with being able to share that story. And when you are able to share that story, you give people permission to do the same, and then you are received in a better way.
And it just ties in with what your LinkedIn post was about. People relate to the truth, and people relate to honest facts. And I hope we've answered Gyansha there as well. And that ties in with my few last question there. And I'm just going to launch that to everyone, which kind of ties nicely. Do you think your employer need to have a deeper knowledge and understand your mental issues and come to a webinar like that? You know, you get a lot of knowledge where you can really empower, help out, and assist people. And of course, we've got a question from an anonymous attendee, which is a great question, which picked up on that as well. And I'm just going to end the poll there and share the results. So 98%, a whopping 98% says, yes, we do need to have that deeper, insightful and understanding of mental health, which is fantastic. What's your word on that one quickly before we move to the next question?
I think what's become clear is that there's a huge gap in the market. There is a huge discrepancy that's happening at the moment, where employers have to become more conscientized to what's going on, to the social issues. And I think, you know, people, as I say, are absolutely for that, being able to give that permission and to have those hard conversations and to create the safe space to be able to do that. And I think if there are any employers here, or any people that are in a position of leadership, that's the biggest takeaway, that people are desperate for that kind of support.
All right, fantastic, thank you. And then there's a question which obviously move on to our next part is, how do you manage mental health when your partner is toxic? Now, I know you talk about that in your book, where enough was enough and you had to say it's time to move on. Maybe if you advise whether, you know, is partner male or female, if it's a toxic relationship, what's your advice in terms of mental health and how do you go about it?
That is a very, very difficult situation to navigate. It is one where I personally would never be able to be in that kind of situation, because it erodes your spirit. You can't be in two different, operating in two different trajectories. So if I'm someone that is working on my mental health and then I've got someone that's bringing me down, that energy is not going to work. And ultimately, we're both going to become sick. The best thing you can do for yourself is get out of that situation. Whether it's a marriage or a relationship, I would rather have my children see me as happy and healthy than be in a situation that serves absolutely no one. For me, time is the most precious thing, especially after having had a near-death experience. And I would not want to waste a moment of it in a life that doesn't serve me and with a partner that doesn't feed my soul. So, you know, you can't live in an environment like that. And you also can never, and this is something that I learned the hard way, you can never ever force someone to get help when they don't want to get the help that they need. And you can never ever save your partner. Every single one of us are responsible for our own mental health. You can never drag someone through that process. You can never accelerate that process. And, you know, as much as you hope that your partner would emulate your behavior, that doesn't always happen. So you need to be in a position where you call it and walk out of that for your own sanity and peace.
And I'd love to share this with you, share the screen with you now, and where you talk about my spirit imploded, but I was brave enough to consider my future self and knew she deserved more than a life of treatment. It takes an enormous amount of courage to leave an abusive situation or anything that doesn't deserve you. It comes at a hefty price of judgment, but my philosophy has always been that my life is worth much more than anyone else's opinion. I'm alone. I alone control my destiny, and I'm sure as hell didn't want to live in fear. And that's a great statement. I mean, I love that. And anybody looking at that, this is what you've just said, right?
I always say
living in fear.
My life is not a democracy. I say that over and over again. My life is not a democracy. No one has a say in how I live my life. And I do what I need to do for me. That's in the best interest of me every single time. And we cannot be in a situation that takes away from us. If something is not working for you 100%, it is not working.
All right, thank you very much indeed. I just want to share give you a quick breather as well. I've got just a few quotes on this day as well. You talk about, just making sure you can see it as well. You talk about the truth is often cringe-worthy and make people reflective looking back, yet we are all made for greatness, and that we can only be tapped into when we take an honest look at ourselves. We have inherent treasures that are unique and are meant to be brought out in order for us to impact this world by living our purpose. By refusing to do the hard work, we're restricting our joy, diminishing our creative spark, and losing our connection. And then again, I would just talk about that. And you talk about your modeling career came to a grinding halt and felt even more self-conscious. I was at an all-time low and extremely vulnerable. And then again, on this one, another great quote which really touched me really was, sometime life has to hurt to get our attention. Death is a natural part of life and no one's spared from it. We can let pain come and ask the bastard to at least teach us something while he outstayed his welcome. Pain is like the clouds, it will come and go, but love the sun, it never goes away, which touched on that. And finally, we need to learn how to love and forgive in life, not in death. Sitting with regrets make healing that much harder. This was a pivotal lesson for us, one that Tivania will carry with her for a long time. Death is sobering, it brings you to your knees. We cannot be arrogant to assume any of us will be here tomorrow. So whatever needs to be said or done now is the time to do it. So what happened, Tivania, is often we do tribute and we give flowers to people who have passed away, but we don't value them when they're here. Maybe a few advice at the back of your story.
So the reference to Tivania was Tivania is my daughter, and 4 years ago we had to say goodbye to her father. So that was my first husband that died 2 weeks before his 40th, a week before his 40th birthday. He was an alcoholic and he never participated in Tivania's life, and we were married for 3 months. So it was extremely difficult. We had a very turbulent relationship over the years because he just, would always choose alcohol over our daughter and would not want to willingly participate in her life. He never contributed to her in any way or form. And then she had to go and bury a man that she didn't know. And I think it's incredibly difficult because that is the foundation as girls that we establish every single relationship with men going forward. And when that instinctive belonging, safety, and nurturing is not there, it can create havoc in your life. But first, I realized, and I had to make peace with the fact that there was a lot of my ex-husband's behavior that I had demonized over the years. And it took a lot of work for me to reach a place of forgiveness, which is something that I did only after his death. When I came to understand that he was a very deeply troubled man, that nobody actually took the time to help. What we had all done, every single one of us that were in his life, was judge and shame before I knew any better. And, to demonize him for the decisions he made and look at the symptoms of his behavior rather than the cause. So my message and what my takeaway was that don't leave things unsaid, especially when you get a message that you need to be doing better, when you get, we especially in COVID, in this year, I've lost so many people that is dear to me through COVID and through suicide in this year. And we cannot take or be arrogant enough to believe that we have tomorrow. Everything that we need to say, all of the forgiveness, all of the healing, for ourselves and for other people needs to be done right now.
Absolutely. We've got 10 minutes left. It's really, really interesting. We've got a question from Dubraj, which is in West Africa, in Conakry, Guinea in West Africa. Would self-esteem contribute in a good mental health? Would self-esteem, I'm sure it will, but what's your thoughts on that one?
It's actually self-love that is the biggest contributor to good
self-love. Right.
Self-love, and everything else is a derivative of that. So self-care, a sense of worthiness, knowing that you are enough. Those were the biggest challenges for me, particularly because I had grown up with the narrative of I am not good enough. And I had all of these life experiences to make me believe that I will never be good enough. I was a secretary for many years, earning a pittance salary, living in a one-bedroom cottage with my daughter, being a single mom. There was no hope for me. I could not drive until I was 30 years old. Fast forward 10 years, I sit on 5 boards. I am a best-selling published author. I'm an editor, a writer, speaker, influencer. I have a business that creates huge awareness around gender-based violence and mental health. These were the things that were not available for me even 7 years ago. These were the things that I thought I did not even dream were available for me. So I had to have a real journey with self-love and understanding that, you know, all of my past experiences don't define me. They never do. What they do is they shape us, for sure, right? But in an empowered way. So we own our stories in a way that is empowering. We don't make it wrong. And it's what we become as a result of it. That's the most important thing.
Absolutely. We've just got one question quickly before we take the last poll. So I've got the poll out. Would you allow your employee time off every month to keep mental health appointment? Or are you as an employee afraid to keep mental health appointment for fear of taking time off? So would you allow your employee to take time off? I think the question is, obviously there's two questions there. But I think if you just answer the first one, would you allow your employee time for every month to keep mental health appointment? I think that'd be great. And already we've got a lot of, already most of you have already voted. So if I can share the result there, 91% say yes. It's a big yes there as well. And why is that so important for employees just to take a few hours off to really get things checked and just to keep going? And it goes back to that productivity theme that we set out when we started.
And you know, the cliche of time is money, where every single cent needs to be utilized. But the fascinating thing is that people don't understand that you lose millions of dollars a year. I mean, depression contributes for almost, I think it was 7 trillion or 74 trillion, I could be wrong, dollars annually because of a loss of productivity, because of people staying away, because of people being hospitalized. Whereas if you give people the time, the support, the effort to be able to take care of ourselves or to take care of themselves, you know, that will absolutely contribute in a positive way to the bottom line. But a lot of leaders don't see that. They see that as taking time off. We don't have the time, we don't have the capacity for it. But in actual fact, it needs to be made a priority because it has a ripple effect on every single thing.
Okay, thank you. We've got Liz who put on a statement on the question and answer. We created some well-being mental health group in my work through the pandemic. We also had a lot of training on sleep, mental health, healthy eating. It really showed me that a lot of my colleagues were really into well-being mental health as I was. It really created a lot of bond together, reduced the barriers between us, and we were supporting to each other. It was such a constructive experience. Thank you, Liz, for that one. And we've got V. Karipudian. She's obviously relating to you. Karipudian is saying to you, she's so powerful as a woman. I wonder how she does not tear up while sharing all this experience. Hats off. Just to let you know, Tivania did cry before we started the webinar. It's only that when we started, she wiped out her tears. I'm only joking, of course. So just quickly, I want to share something with you before we are almost there with the conclusion. So just quickly, what Tivania said on the book, I will send you the link. Please buy that book, guys. It's the book of your life, if you really want that. So Tivania goes on to say that the single act of courage and love changed my life forever. She told me that she recognized that I'm in trouble and that she saw my pain and begged me to consider attending a workshop on personal development that she bore testament to and which changed her life years before. I've also learned that there's no shame in being human. We need to get clear about the fact that all of us have similar longing, flaws, fears, and traumas. And the more we remain silent about secret, the sicker we become. I didn't know how my voice would be differentiated from the rest, so my writing was confined to the safety of my blog and the odd online magazine. It was not the scale I wanted or was capable of. I knew for a long time that my purpose and soul calling was to be a writer. I love the idea I could create moments of life and spirit that people could find miracle and truth in. I knew that I wanted my words to become a sanctuary for the storm of life or anxious mind. So before we get the last word of wisdom, I just wanted to share a nice video to all of you before we conclude. So we want to be happy as an industry, whether it's construction, whether it's banking, whether it's education, off we go. Just making sure if you can hear the sound and also the images, please give me a thumbs up. Off we go. Okay, so thank you very much indeed for this video. And as we just making sure I've got the video there. And then I think what you can control, I've got two quotes. First one is, again, Tivania talk about it, you know, nobody can control your life. And the quote from Viktor Frankl, everything in life can be taken away from you except for your freedom to choose how you respond. And the nice quote on the right-hand side of the screen there, through the fire, I discovered the writer. Through the fire, I discovered the lover. Love is not meant to be safe. It is not meant to be comfortable or easy. There's no learning in that. We are all meant to shine, and we need to stand in the center of the fire in order to burn away the story of the past and awaken the warrior inside. So please, obviously, take a snapshot if you want. But I think that that's the real word from Tivania there. So let's keep talking about it. Please, if you see someone who you think might be experiencing mental health, please don't ignore them, talk to them. Sometimes listening is all it takes. It's okay not to be okay. You are not alone. Help, advice, and support are available. I will send you all the details from Tivania as well to catch up on that one. We'll do a quick final survey before we conclude on that one. Thank you, Tivania. From the bottom of our heart and on behalf of all participants today, endless thanks for your invaluable times and for giving back, for being a role model for all of us. And as you say yourself in your book, I wish for you to use my life story as a mirror, lean in and start to ask yourself that really hard question in order to take your life to the next level. Take care, be safe, of course. And that's the last bit, and I will come back to Tivania for the loss of wisdom. And I love this slide. I never imagined I would be who I am today, but I am here. Now it's time for you to rise up. I will meet you at the top. What a fantastic way to really end this. And I just want to share the survey quickly, the last one as well. And the last survey is on, based on the presentation today, do you think you will explore your mental health for better productivity and find your fire? So we want to find out what you guys want to do afterward today. It's been a truly, truly inspirational webinar. So strong and powerful. It's truly unbelievable at Tivania. So what's your word of wisdom to all of us watching today? It's been emotional. It's been on a roller coaster. We had some happy moments. but most of it was a story of a fighter, of a struggler. So I'm just going to end the poll now. Most people have voted. Before you give us the word of wisdom, Tivania, what do you think the poll would be based on the presentation today?
I hope that if you had asked the question at the beginning, I hope that people now would change their answer, and as a result of my life story, be more willing and receptive to ask themselves a hard question, and to really find that fire that every single one of us possess.
In terms of the survey which we did, what do you think the poll would be based on your performance today?
Let's hope it's on the higher side of the spectrum, that people want to find the yes.
So the performance is 100%. Can we have a big
Amazing.
round of applause, everyone, for of
Wonderful.
course for this awesome obviously webinar, 100%, and we will be motivated going forward. Big round of applause for Tivania there as well. Tivania, any wisdom you want to give to anybody right now going through divorce, miscarriages, partner beating each other, going through any suicide mode and things like that? What's your advice to all the right now?
I think the most important thing that anyone gets to take away is that living in truth will set you free, that you are worthy exactly as you are to achieve every single thing that your life ever dreamed of achieving. My life is a testament to that. Every single person has a spark. That spark needs to be ignited and it will turn into a flame. Believe me, that would be the greatest gift you could give yourself. And it is the greatest gift that you could give to everyone around you, to live the fullest expression of who you are. There's always hope. There's always faith. And I hope that you are able to take that away today.
And just a few comments. We've got Jaina saying a truly inspiring and engaging CPD. We've got Cabo from Zambia. Thank you, Tivania and Anil. Wonderful CPD. We've got John. Thanks, Tivania, for the great sharing and being authentic. Stephanie, great sharing and inspirational. So before I go, I just wanted to say, guys, don't forget to email me with your names and also your feedback after we finished. We'll get a circuit attendance for you today. We'll send you the link for Tivania's book, worth buying. I've read it twice now, and I've gone through all the highlights, as you can see. And I think Tivania goes on to say, from ashes to dust, the flame rises again and again, lighting the way for others. This is my joy, my purpose, my gift, and it's limitless. So Tivania, thank you very much indeed. We are so inspired by you, your story, and just being genuine and honest about us. And I'm no doubt will inspire many that's been watching us today and many that will be looking at the recorded YouTube afterwards. So Tivania, on the bottom of my heart and from everyone else, thank you from around the world. And I'm sure next year we could do something else. So thank you very much indeed, Tivania. Anything you want to say to us before we conclude?
It was such an honor. I'm always so excited to be connecting with people and to share my story. And I think that, collectively as a humanity, all we need is love. And I'm hoping that we get to connect with love and from love.
All right, thank you. And then we've got Del saying, thanks a lot, Tivania. A worthwhile, no nonsense sharing. Wow, this is an incredible feedback. And we've got Yasan from Canada. Thanks, Tivania and Anil, for such an excellent CPD. And I appreciate very much to have access to the recording as well. So thank you, Tivania. Maybe a big wave to all of us here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Take care and make sure you keep your mental health in check and make sure you're a fighter and keep the fire burning. See you later. Thank you very much indeed. Take care, Tivania, and have a great one.
Guys.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.